It was an ordinary October afternoon in a small Texas town. Dry leaves danced on the sidewalk, children played in the streets, and life continued its tranquil rhythm as always. But in that house at the end of the street, the silence was different, heavy, suffocating. The family waited in the living room, trying to hide their nervousness, rehearsing smiles that didn't reach their eyes. They knew he was coming back. The son, the brother, the boyfriend who left full of life 2 years ago. But no one knew who was really coming back. When the door opened, the man who entered didn't seem the same as the one who had left. His eyes, once bright and full of dreams, now avoided any contact. His hunched shoulders carried an invisible weight that no backpack could explain. He could barely look at his mother, who rushed to hug him. He felt the embrace, but couldn't reciprocate. Something inside him had shattered into such tiny pieces that he didn't even know where to begin to put it back together. Have you ever felt like you lost yourself at some point in your life? That feeling of looking in the mirror and not recognizing who's on the other side. War does that. It doesn't just destroy cities and countries. It enters people's souls and removes parts that can never be put back the same way. And the worst part is that nobody sees it. There's no blood flowing, no open wounds to heal with bandages. The deepest scars are the ones that remain hidden, screaming silently inside the mind, waking up in the middle of the night with the sound of explosions that only he can hear. In the days that followed, the family tried everything. They prepared his favorite meals, organized gatherings with old friends, tried to bring him back with happy memories. But he was there without being there, physically present, absent in everything else. Conversations died before they even began. Smiles were forced, painful to watch. And little by little, everyone began to realize a devastating truth. They hadn't lost him in the war. They lost him when he returned. Stay with me until the end, because what you're about to discover could completely change how you view pain and transformation. No one was prepared for the man who returned from that war. Not the friends who grew up with him playing soccer on the fields of Ohio. Not the girlfriend who waited faithfully, writing letters every week. Not even himself. When you lose yourself, when everything you knew about who you were disappears in the fire and chaos, how do you start over? How do you explain to people that their son didn't come back, that he died on some foreign battlefield, and that the one who's there is just a shadow trying to remember what it feels like to be human? This is the story of a man who was destroyed by war. But it's not a story about destruction. It's about what happens when you're at the bottom of the darkest pit imaginable, when every breath hurts, when the simple act of waking up feels like punishment. It's about that impossible moment when everything is lost, and yet something inside you refuses to give up completely. And what happened next, nobody could have imagined. Before we continue this journey together, I need to tell you something. If you're here now, if this story is resonating within you in some way, perhaps it's because you too know this pain. Maybe you're a veteran, maybe you know someone who's been through this, or maybe you're facing your own invisible war right now. And if that's the case, know that you're not alone. Leave a comment below, sharing what has touched you the most so far. It could be a word, a phrase, or even your own story. You can't imagine the power you have when someone shares their truth. Often a single comment below can be exactly what someone else needed to read today to not give up. That's the strength of a community that cares, that understands, that doesn't judge. And if this message resonates with you, if you want more people to know about these stories of impossible transformation, of lives that refuse to be defined by pain, leave a like below. Because that's how this type of content reaches those who truly need it. Each like is a vote of confidence, a way of saying this story deserves to be heard. Your participation here is literally what makes this channel grow and reach more people with this type of message that can save lives. And if you're not already subscribed, hit that subscribe button now and turn on notifications, because every week I bring you real stories of people who transformed their greatest tragedies into fuel for rebirth. Stories that mainstream media doesn't tell, lives that deserve to be celebrated, transformations that need to inspire. You're part of this now. Now, returning to that broken soldier, trying to survive in a house that no longer felt like his, with a family that no longer knew how to reach him. The days began to turn into weeks, and the weeks into months of deafening silence. The days began to turn into weeks, and the weeks into months of deafening silence. But to truly understand the depth of this transformation, we need to go back in time. We need to know who this man was before everything fell apart. Because the hidden truth behind any radical transformation lies precisely in the contrast between who we were and who we became. His name was Michael Thompson, 22 years old, born and raised in a quiet little town in Ohio, where everyone knows everyone. The kind of place where doors are left unlocked, where neighbors are like family, where dreams are simple and honest. Michael had worked in his father's auto repair shop since he was 16. He would wake up early, fix cars, and come home with his hands covered in grease and a light heart. On Sundays, he played baseball with his friends on the field near the church. He was good at the sport, not the best, but good enough to make the crowd roar when he hit a good ball. He had a girlfriend named Sarah. They met in high school. That kind of young, genuine love that everyone around them could feel. She worked at the city library, and they dreamed together of simple things: getting married, having children, continuing to live in that same city where everything made sense. Michael didn't have grand ambitions to change the world. He just wanted to live a dignified, honest life, surrounded by the people he loved, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. In fact, there's a profound beauty in simple dreams, because it's precisely these dreams that build the foundation of a meaningful life. Then came the draft. The war needed men, and Michael, like so many other young Americans of that generation, felt it was his duty to serve. He wasn't political. He didn't fully understand the reasons behind the conflict, but he grew up hearing that protecting his country was the right thing to do. Sarah cried when he told her. His mother did too. His father tried to be strong, squeezed his son's hand firmly, and said he would be back soon. They all lied to each other at that moment, saying that everything would be all right, that he would come back whole, that nothing would change. War doesn't choose who to destroy. It simply destroys. It doesn't matter if you're good or bad, if you have a family waiting for you, if your dreams are humble or grand. War takes young people full of life and transforms them into something completely different. And the cruelest part is that it happens in ways that no one can see from the outside. Michael spent 18 months in combat, 18 months that felt like an eternity. When he finally returned to that house in Texas where his family had moved while he was away, he was no longer the same Michael who had left. The worst wounds are not the ones that appear on the body. They are the ones that bleed inside, invisible to the eyes of the beholder, but devastating to the one who carries them. The nights were the worst time. Every time he closed his eyes, he was back there. The sound of explosions echoed in his mind with terrifying clarity. The smell of smoke and gunpowder seemed to be permanently ingrained in his nostrils. He would wake up sweating, his heart racing, searching for cover, taking a few confused seconds to realize he was in his own room, safe. But was he really safe? Because the enemy was now inside his own head, and there was no escaping this battlefield. During the day, any loud noise would make him freeze. A door slamming, a car rumbling in the street, fireworks in the distance. Every sound was a potential threat, and his body would instantly go into survival mode. The people around him didn't understand. How could they? They hadn't seen what he saw, hadn't borne the weight of the decisions he had to make, didn't know the faces that haunted him every night. Michael tried to return to work. He managed to last 3 weeks in the workshop before having a full-blown panic attack in the middle of his shift. The noise of the pneumatic tools, the smell of oil, everything mixed together in his mind, and suddenly he was back in the desert, hearing gunshots, seeing blood. He ran out, dropped the tools on the floor, went home trembling and never returned. How could he explain to his father that the simple act of tightening a screw now triggered traumatic memories? How to put into words a terror that has no logic? Sarah tried to be there. God knows she tried. But how can you love someone who can no longer receive love? Michael gradually distanced himself from her, not because he no longer loved her, but because he felt he didn't deserve to be loved. There were things he had seen, things he had done, that made him feel unworthy of any kind of affection or normalcy. He began avoiding her calls, making excuses not to see her, until one day she stopped calling, and he felt both relief and pain because of it. Isolation became his only constant companion. Michael spent entire days locked in his room, the curtains drawn, avoiding any kind of human interaction. His family knocked on the door, begged him to come out, tried to convince him to seek help. But how can you seek help when you can barely get out of bed? How can you call for help when your own voice seems to have disappeared? Back then, in the late 2000s and early 2010s, there was still a huge stigma surrounding mental health, especially among veterans. PTSD was an acronym few people knew, and those who did often associated it with weakness. Michael heard well-meaning people say things like, "You just need to move on," or "Be grateful you're alive," as if it were that simple. As if the mind worked like a switch you could just turn off when the memories became too heavy. The truth is that Michael was slowly dying, not physically, but in every other way that matters. His essence, his identity, everything that made him who he was being consumed by this relentless darkness. He lost weight, stopped taking care of himself, let his beard grow uncontrollably. When he looked in the mirror, what he saw was a stranger. A ghost inhabiting a body he no longer recognized as his own. The months dragged on in a torturous routine of sleepless nights and aimless days. Michael began drinking to try and silence his thoughts. Alcohol offered brief relief, a few hours of numbness where memories became more hazy, less clear. But like any temporary escape, it only made things worse. The drinking brought new problems. Arguments with family, moments he couldn't remember, and even deeper shame. It was on a particularly bad night, after yet another nightmare that kept him awake and sweating until dawn, that Michael hit rock bottom. He sat on the edge of the bed, clutching something in his trembling hands, staring at the object as if it were the only solution left. Tears streamed silently down his face, and a terrifying thought echoed in his mind. Perhaps everyone would be better off without him. Perhaps the burden he represented for his family, for Sarah, for everyone around him, was too heavy. Perhaps the real Michael had died in that war, and this one here was just a dysfunctional remnant that didn't deserve to continue. It was there, in that darkest moment imaginable, when the pain becomes so unbearable that the only way out seems to be to cease to exist, that something happened. His phone rang, an unknown number. Michael almost didn't answer. In fact, he stared at the ringing phone for several seconds, considering ignoring it as he had been ignoring everything in life lately. But something, perhaps the survival instinct still fighting in some forgotten corner of his consciousness, made him answer. The voice on the other end was calm, steady, and strangely familiar in its tone. It was another veteran, someone who had served in the same unit as Michael, though they had never been close during their service. His name was James, and he had gotten Michael's number through a mutual friend. James didn't mince words. He said he knew what Michael was going through because he had been through it too. He spoke of his own nights of terror, of the days he couldn't leave the house, of the time he too had looked into a similar abyss and almost jumped. But then James said something that pierced through all that fog of despair. "You're still here, brother. And if you're still here, it means your story isn't over. It means there's something more waiting for you on the other side of this pain. They talked for 2 hours that night. James didn't try to solve all of Michael's problems in one phone call. He didn't offer magic solutions or false promises that everything would be all right quickly. What he offered was something far more valuable: presence. The certainty that Michael wasn't alone in this invisible battle. Sometimes salvation comes from where we least expect it. It doesn't come in an epic moment of divine revelation or an instant miraculous cure. It comes in a 3 a.m. phone call from someone who understands your pain because they've been through something similar. It comes in the form of an outstretched hand when you thought you were alone in a hole from which there was no escape. James invited Michael to attend a veterans support group that met every Wednesday night at a community center. Michael said he would think about it, but made no promises. However, something had changed that night. Not a dramatic change, but a small crack in the armor of despair he had built around himself. For the first time in months, he went to sleep without putting that terrifying object back where he had found it. For the first time, a tiny part of him considered the possibility that maybe, just maybe, there was still a way back. It took Michael 3 weeks to finally muster enough courage to go to that meeting. He nearly gave up 5 times on the way there. He parked his car outside the community center and sat there for 20 minutes, debating with himself whether he should go in or not. His mind was full of excuses. He didn't need this. He could handle it on his own. Talking about his problems wouldn't change anything. But deep down, very deep down, there was a small, insistent voice that said, "Just try. Just this once. Try something different." When he finally entered, he found a circle of chairs with about 12 men and 3 women, all veterans of different conflicts and eras. James was there, and his eyes lit up when he saw Michael. He didn't make a fuss, didn't bother him with excessive attention, just nodded and indicated an empty chair beside him. Michael sat down, his muscles tense, ready to rush out at any moment. The meeting began. Each person had the opportunity to speak, but no one was forced. Some shared their struggles of the week, others spoke of small victories, some simply listened. When it was Michael's turn, he shook his head, indicating that he didn't want to speak. And that was respected. No one judged him, no one pressured him. He simply sat there and listened to the stories of people who understood exactly the kind of hell he was going through. There was an older man, a Vietnam veteran, who spoke about how it took him more than 30 years to seek help. 30 years carrying that weight alone, destroying relationships, losing jobs, living a half-life. He looked directly at Michael and said, "Don't wait 30 years like I waited. You're still young. You have a whole life ahead of you. Don't let the war steal that from you." There was a woman who had served in Iraq and who spoke about how PTSD had cost her her marriage, her relationship with her children, almost everything. But there she was, 3 years into recovery, rebuilding her life piece by piece. She said something that stuck in Michael's mind. Transformation doesn't happen all at once. It happens one breath at a time. Some days you can take a deep breath and feel almost human again. Other days, all you can manage is a short, shallow breath, but that's it, you keep breathing. Michael returned the following week, and the week after that too. He still didn't have the courage to speak, but being there, hearing those stories, knowing that he wasn't the only human being on the planet going through this, was already something. It was a microscopic first step on a journey that he didn't even know where it would lead yet. At the 5th meeting, Michael finally spoke. It was only 3 sentences, spoken in a trembling voice and with his eyes fixed on the floor. But he spoke. He said his name, that he was a veteran, that he was fighting. And when he finished, the whole group responded in unison. "Thank you for sharing, Michael." Those simple words, that basic acknowledgement of his existence and his struggle, broke something inside him. He cried there, in front of strangers who had somehow become the family that understood what he was going through. James became an informal mentor to Michael. They started meeting for coffee before meetings. James wasn't a professional therapist, but he had something that was perhaps most valuable at that moment: authentic experience. He had been in the same dark hole and had found a way out. He shared what worked for him, always making it clear that each person's journey is unique, but that there are tools, strategies, and ways of dealing with trauma that truly help. It was James who convinced Michael to seek professional therapy. He recommended a psychologist who specialized in working with veterans, someone who understood the specific type of trauma that comes from combat. Michael was resistant at first. The idea of sitting in a therapist's office and talking about his feelings with a stranger seemed impossible. But James was persistent, gently insistent, and eventually Michael agreed to at least try one session. That first therapy session was one of the hardest things Michael had ever done, harder in some ways than anything he faced in the war. Because in war you have an external enemy, something to fight against. But there, in that office, he was being asked to look inward, to confront the demons he had spent months trying to avoid. He cried throughout the session. He could barely speak coherently, but the therapist, a middle-aged man named Dr. Patterson, remained calm, compassionate, present. He didn't try to fix Michael in 50 minutes. He simply met him where he was. The following sessions were equally difficult. They worked on grounding techniques for when the flashbacks came. Deep breaths, name 5 things he could see, 4 he could touch, 3 he could hear. It seemed silly at first, but it worked. Not perfectly, not always, but it worked enough that the panic attacks became a little more manageable. They worked with gradual exposure therapy, where Michael was encouraged to revisit traumatic memories in a safe environment, process them differently, and take away the power they had over him. This was excruciating. There were sessions where Michael would leave the office completely exhausted, feeling like he had fought a physical battle. But Dr. Patterson always reminded him, every time you face this, you are rewriting the narrative. You are teaching your brain that these memories can no longer control you. Small victories began to appear. At first, they were so small that Michael barely noticed them. One day, he managed to sleep 4 hours straight without waking up screaming. It seems like little, but for someone who had spent months sleeping a maximum of 2 hours a night, it was immense. Another day, he managed to go to the supermarket alone without having a panic attack in the middle of the crowded aisles. He even managed to talk for 5 minutes with an old schoolmate he ran into by chance, and didn't run away from the conversation after 30 seconds, as he usually did. The first time Michael managed to leave the house without feeling that crushing weight on his chest was a milestone. He walked to the park near where he lived, sat on a bench, and simply stood there, watching people live their normal lives. Children playing, couples walking, dogs chasing balls. Life happening as it always does. And for the first time in a long time, he didn't feel completely disconnected from it. He still didn't feel part of that normal world, but at least he could look at it without feeling like he was watching from another planet. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because what happened next completely changed Michael's trajectory. During one of the group meetings, one of the veterans casually mentioned that he had started running as a way to cope with anxiety. He talked about how the intense physical activity seemed to burn off some of the nervous energy that was constantly building up in his body, about how focusing on his breathing and steps took him out of his own head for a few hours. Michael had never been particularly athletic aside from casual Sunday baseball, but something about this resonated with him. The next morning, he woke before dawn, put on an old pair of sneakers, and went out for a run. He managed to get to the end of the street before having to stop, breathless and with trembling legs. Anyone watching from the outside would think it was pathetic. But for Michael, those 200 meters were a monumental achievement. He had left the house voluntarily, he had done something physically challenging, and he had survived. He returned the next day, and the next. Each day he managed to go a little further. At first it was just about distraction, about having something to focus on that wasn't the tormenting memories. But gradually it became something more. Running became a moving meditation, a time when he could be present in the moment without being dragged into the past. His lungs burning, his heart pounding, the sensation of his feet hitting the asphalt, all of that was concrete, real now. 3 months later, Michael ran his first 5-kilometer race. He was the last to cross the finish line, exhausted and with trembling legs, but he made it. James was there waiting for him, and they embraced, 2 men who understood the true weight of that moment. It wasn't about the race. It was about what that race represented, the ability to challenge himself again, to set a goal and achieve it, to prove to himself that he was still capable of growth and achievement. It was through these small, accumulated victories that Michael began to feel something he hadn't felt in a long time. Purpose. Not a grand, defined purpose yet, but a growing sense that perhaps his journey through this hell wasn't meaningless. Perhaps there was a reason he had survived when others hadn't. Perhaps his pain could be transformed into something that would help other people. He began sharing more in the group meetings, not just his struggles, but also his small victories. And he noticed something interesting. When he talked about how he had managed to sleep through the night, or how he had managed to go to a public place without panicking, he saw hope in the eyes of other veterans who were still in the darkest stages. His journey, however imperfect and incomplete, was serving as a beacon for others who were still completely lost in the darkness. One day, a younger veteran, newly arrived in the group, approached Michael after the meeting. He was in the same state Michael had been in months before. Empty eyes, defeated posture, clearly on the edge. He said he was thinking of giving up, that he saw no way out. And Michael, remembering James's call that had changed everything, sat down with that young man and talked. He didn't offer magic solutions or empty promises. He simply shared his own story, his own struggle, and most importantly, his own proof that it is possible to begin healing, even when it seems impossible. That conversation awakened something in Michael. He realized that the war had tried to end him, had tried to destroy everything he was, but he could use the scars, the knowledge gained through pain, as a map to help others who were lost in the same dark territory. He began to volunteer more actively in the support group, eventually becoming a facilitator for some of the sessions. He underwent additional training to better understand PTSD, coping strategies, and the resources available to veterans. Michael also went back to school. He enrolled in an online psychology program focused on trauma counseling. The classes were challenging, especially after years away from academic studies, but he was motivated in a way he never had been before. He had found something bigger than himself, a mission that gave meaning to his pain. The war tried to destroy him, but he was using his scars as a map to help others who were lost. Of course, it wasn't all a straight upward path. Real transformation isn't linear, and Michael discovered this the hard way. There were bad days that would come back out of nowhere, weeks where nightmares returned in full force, where anxiety became overwhelming again, where all the progress seemed to have been just an illusion. In one of these particularly severe relapses, Michael spent 5 days without getting out of bed, ignoring calls, canceling appointments, feeling like he had completely failed. But this time there was a crucial difference. He had a support network. James showed up at his door, didn't accept excuses, and simply sat there with him. Not trying to fix him, not judging, just present. Dr. Patterson adjusted his therapeutic approach, working with Michael to identify the triggers that had caused that relapse and developing more robust strategies. The group of veterans continued sending supportive messages, reminding him that relapses don't mean failure. They mean that healing is an ongoing process. Write in the comments, transformation is a journey, if this resonated with you in any way. Michael learned that transformation is a daily battle he chose to fight. Some days he wins easily, other days he merely survives. But each day he wakes up and decides to keep going is a victory against everything that tried to destroy him. Today, 5 years after that dark night when he almost gave up on everything, Michael coordinates a support program for veterans in his region. He helps dozens of men and women who returned from the war, carrying the same ghosts he carried. He runs marathons to raise funds for mental health organizations. He went back to school and is finishing his master's degree in psychology. And, perhaps the sweetest victory of all, he reconnected with Sarah. It wasn't easy, and it took time to rebuild that trust. But today, they are engaged, planning the wedding they always dreamed of, only now with a much deeper understanding of what it truly means to love someone through the storms. The man who returned from the war died that dark night. But in his place was born someone whom the war could not destroy, someone stronger, not because he has no scars, but because he learned that scars are proof of battles survived, someone with purpose, with a mission, with the ability to transform the deepest pain into fuel to help others find their own light. The message here isn't about glorifying war or romanticizing suffering. It's about the absurdly powerful human capacity to rise from one's own ashes. It's about the fact that no matter how dark the hole you're in right now, no matter how impossible the way out seems, there's always a way back to the light. It might be a long, winding road, full of obstacles and setbacks, but it exists. If you're going through your own personal hell right now, whatever it may be, I want you to know this. The end of your story hasn't been written yet. The most impossible transformation may be waiting for you on the very other side of the pain you're feeling now. You just need to keep breathing, one breath at a time, and be open to that outstretched hand when it appears. Because it will appear. It may come from where you least expect it, but it will appear. And if you know someone who is fighting an invisible battle, whether a veteran or not, be there for them. Don't try to fix them. Don't offer simplistic solutions. Just be there. Sometimes the difference between someone giving up and someone finding the strength to try one more day is simply knowing they are not alone in this fight. If you've made it this far, to the end of this story, it's because something in it resonated with you. Maybe you're going through your own transformation. Maybe you know someone who is. Or maybe you just understand that we are all, in some way, constantly dying and being reborn into different versions of ourselves. Write in the comments, "This message was for me. I want to know that you were here, that this story reached you." And if this kind of content resonates with you, if you want to keep seeing real stories of people who transformed their greatest tragedies into fuel for rebirth, subscribe to the channel. Every week I bring a new journey, a new impossible transformation, a new proof that human strength is greater than any destruction we try to face. Leave a like too, because that's how I know this work is making a difference, that these stories are reaching those who need to hear them. And look, there's a video over here about another type of rebirth that will surprise you. Click and continue with me there, because the journey doesn't end here.